What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are staying safe and you've been doing well since the last time I posted. Sorry I haven't posted in a few weeks. I meant to, but I've been fortunate enough to get involved with the Ocala Civic Theater now that I have time to actually do stuff like that. And I'm in their upcoming production of The Crucible. So I've just been really kind of focused on that and enjoying that. And that's going to go up soon. So if you're in the Ocala area, I encourage you to come check it out. It'll be well worth it. It's such an incredible theater production company, such an incredible community theater, such an incredible cast, all that stuff. If you come see this show, if you come see The Crucible, you won't be sorry, I promise. So now on to what we're going to talk about today. Some of you may or may not have seen the case of Robertson. I keep calling him Robertson, but it's Roberson. Robert Roberson. He was recently granted another stay of execution in the state of Texas due to his due to the science that they're debating in his case. Now, Robert Roberson, I'm gonna walk you through the timeline of events, and then we'll kind of talk about the big controversy surrounding this case. So I'm just gonna start at the beginning, and then we'll kind of work our way through. And then we'll get to the end, and then we'll talk about the big things that are, at least in my mind, that are the big things about this case. So I got my notes here. You guys know I like my notes. I like making sure I get things accurate, even if I share my opinion, which I tend to do, and I will definitely do in this video. I still want to be accurate. I don't want to be the person portraying their opinion as fact. That's why they're called opinions. So in January 2002 was when this goes down. Robert Roberson brings his daughter to the emergency room in Palestine, Texas. And the doctors and the nurses that are working on his daughter when he brings her in that January morning, identify the injuries as shaken baby syndrome. They're like, hey, this kid has the triad assumptions of shaken baby syndrome, which I'm going to read these so I make sure I'm accurate. Subdural bleeding, brain swelling, and retinal hemorrhages, if I can use words correctly. So they're going, okay, due to what we're seeing here, due to the injuries that are present, we believe that this is a case of abuse. So he gets arrested, and then in February of 2003, he ends up getting convicted in the shaken baby syndrome death of his young daughter, and then he gets sentenced to death in Texas. And Texas is one of those states when it comes to the death penalty that don't play about the death penalty. If you're on death row in Texas, it's going to take a miracle to get you out, I think, compared to other states. I think it's hard all across the board, but we all know about Texas and their reputation about the death penalty and stuff like that. So in 2007 is his first state appeals, and those get denied, and he also gets a denial to re-examine his case. He's like, hey, look at this case. We don't think this case is it was prosecuted right. We don't think the science was looked at right. I'm not a science expert, so I won't delve too deeply into the science. So I encourage you to do your own research on that and tell me if you think I'm wrong on this. So I welcome the corrections because I want to be accurate. So 2007, he gets that first that first appeal denied. Now 2013, this is one of the important bits. Texas passes what they call the junk science law, and that basically states, hey, if you were convicted of a crime and using science that we now think is faulty or inaccurate or something along those veins, your case warrants a second look, essentially. Like, hey, we think that science is no longer accurate. Now we think your case deserves a second look if it falls under that junk science law that we're talking about. So remember that. So 2016 is when his lawyers begin arguing that his case and his conviction falls under this junk science. So they're like, hey, this is completely what this is. We don't think he should be executed. We don't think he even did this because this falls under this junk science law, and we think that's why he shouldn't be executed, if I can use words correctly here. So his case is taken to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. They bring this to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and they refer this to the Anderson County Trial Court, which takes until 2023 to render a decision. So we'll keep that in mind here. So it's 2016. They're reviewing this. They're saying, hey, we think this falls under this junk science law. We need to take a look at this, so to speak. So 2018, this is another big point of contention, at least for me. He supposedly gets diagnosed with autism, and his team throws their hands up and goes, that explains why his flight affect, that explains why he couldn't properly portray the correct emotions that the prosecution was saying that he was missing because he was a psychopath. He's not a psychopath. He just has autism, and that shouldn't be held against him because he wasn't portraying the correct emotions because he can't portray those emotions because he's autistic, is essentially their argument there, which I got a problem with, but we'll talk about that at the end. 2021, there's another evidentiary hearing based on this scientific analysis, because the scientific analysis of his daughter here is the main contention of this trial. If the science matches up to what they are accusing him of, then he's guilty. If it doesn't match up, he's not guilty. So you got to make sure that the science is correct before you execute him, because although I am pro-death penalty, I'm not willy-nilly willing to send anyone to execution beyond there being another iota of a doubt that they're not guilty. You have to be 100,000,000% sure someone's guilty before before you should execute them. So fast forward to the next year, so 2024. The lead detective in his case tells the Dallas Morning News and starts doing interviews basically stating, hey, I don't believe he's I don't believe he's guilty. I believe he's innocent. This is an innocent man. I feel sorry for him. Politicians get involved. There's like 80 some odd politicians in Texas. And I'm not too concerned about those politicians getting involved, so let me tell you why. Because a couple of them were doing an interview about this case, and they basically stated the quiet part out loud and saying, hey, this isn't actually about him. This is about us basically looking at this junk science law, and they're talking about the junk science law. They're basically stating, hey, we don't actually care about Robertson, whether we believe he is innocent. We're just using him as a pawn to get for this new junk science law, which I think is to be expected, unfortunately. But that's why I don't take, at least in this particular case, these politicians' words seriously, and why they say they care about Robert, which I don't think they actually do. They're doing photo ops in prison. They're praying for him, talking about how nice of a guy he is. But they said in their own words, two of them said basically, hey, this isn't about him. This is bigger than him. So that's just my thought on that. So later, 2 months later, July 2024, he gets an execution date set for October 17th of that same year. And now this is the first execution date set. So October rolls around, and he gets a stay of execution because he gets subpoenaed to testify in front of the Texas Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence, if I said that right. Now, they were like, this is a legally binding thing. He has to testify. You can't execute him if he is subpoenaed. So they stay the execution, but he gets barred from testifying because the AG bars him from testifying. The governor said this isn't right. He shouldn't be. This isn't right. I'm paraphrasing here. And then the next month, November, the Texas Supreme Court says, hey, this subpoena overstepped its power, and this execution should have gone ahead. Basically stating, hey, this man should have been executed. This shouldn't have even been an issue. This isn't what subpoenas are for, which I agree with. Even if you think the guy is innocent, that's not what subpoenas aren't to be saving you from the death penalty. That's not what subpoenas are for. Now, fast forward to this year. So a year, almost a year later from the first execution date. So July of this year, he gets another execution date, which is just a couple days ago from the recording of this video. Now he gets, and this is where it currently lies, he gets another stay due to this the shaken baby syndrome debate, because the biggest part of this stay is there is new precedent set in which another conviction in Texas was overturned using this junk science law, and his lawyers basically said, hey, there's new science, there's also there's new stuff, there's new precedent in this case in which we think merits a look. So that's what they're doing right now, and that's where the case is right now. He received the stay, and he is currently sitting on death row. So what are my thoughts about this? Now, I think the first thing I want to mention is the autism diagnosis. Now, I highly, in my opinion, I'm not an expert in that topic at all, but I highly doubt this particular autism diagnosis, and let me explain to you why. Because they're saying, oh, it can explain his flat affect, it could explain why he wasn't portraying the proper emotions, but it took you until years later, he's already on death row, you're fighting for the guy's life. It seems just a little too convenient that now you're saying, oh, the guy's got autism, you know, you can't execute him because he just can't portray the proper emotions because he's autistic. Now, I don't blame defense attorneys here. I never try to blame defense attorneys because they're just trying to do their job and representing their clients to the best of their ability. Now, if I'm ever in a position to have to need a defense attorney, I would hope my defense attorney would do the same thing for me in attempting to represent me the best way they can. Now, I won't criticize them when I think they're wrong and they've gone too far, but I don't try to criticize them for doing their jobs, you know what I mean? I never tried to do that. That's just the way our system works. So I highly doubt, and I have a lot of problems with this supposed autism diagnosis that occurred well more than a decade after he's been sitting on death row. It just seems a little too convenient for me. And now I want to talk about this shaken baby syndrome argument that they're debating here. Now, I'm not a medical expert. I'm not trying to portray myself as one, but there's a lot of people in his camp that are calling SBS junk science, and they're not just saying that his conviction was based on faulty science. There's been numerous people in the interviews that I've watched that have called shaken baby syndrome itself junk science. I could be misunderstanding what they're saying, and if so, they really need to clean up their how they're talking about this, because this is a death penalty case, so they need to make sure they're talking about it the right way. And I can't understand how you're calling SBS is real, because that's a real thing. If you pick something up, if you pick a kid up and you shake them, that's violent whiplash. You're gonna hurt that kid. You're going to severely injure, if not kill, that kid. I also don't understand their defense as far as, hey, this kid was sick, this kid fell off the bed, this kid, you know, there's other natural causes that could potentially show the same injuries within the brain as shaken baby syndrome. So that's what they're arguing. And I'm like, even if that's the case, you're saying this kid was sick, these injuries were these with whatever medical conditions this kid had, and then this kid fell off the bed. And I'm like, I'm no expert here, but I truly think that a fall off the bed, I got my bed right here. If I fall off that bed, if I was a kid, and then someone picked me up and shake me, those are two vastly different injuries. I'm gonna have bruises from where my head or where my face hit my bed frame or the floor. I'm gonna have marks from how hard things were when I was hitting the floor. That's not how, to my knowledge, and all the other cases like this I've looked at as far as SBS goes, that's not how I've ever seen that work. That's not how, if you pick something up and shake it, those injuries are present. The injuries that are present are different from the other injuries that you're gonna get. So what do I think about his execution? First off, I think this previous execution should have gone ahead, and the Texas Supreme Court said as much, essentially, unless I'm misunderstanding what they're saying. And unless any other massive scientific discoveries come out of this next thing that they're going through right now with him, he should be executed, because it's been 20 plus years. There's been no proof that he didn't do it. He's already been convicted of it. I think it's more likely than not that this man did do this, but I'm just waiting to see what this current stay shows. If they bring up any massive scientific evidence that proves he's innocent, that's great. And then the people that arrested him should be prosecuted because they put away an innocent man based on faulty science. But if they come back and say, hey, there's no science that's irregular here, because a number of medical experts have testified that, hey, this is 100% SBS. The people who aren't even connected with this case have said it's SBS. And I've never heard of one of these doctors or nurses from that night backtracking and saying, hey, we don't believe this is SBS anymore. So that's why I lean towards he is guilty. But I want to wait until this current stay goes through and we see what happens. Now, I think that he should have been executed a long time ago, but because I think that death row you shouldn't be on death row for 20 plus years. But this whole appeals process and looking at the science and looking at making sure you're guilty, it shouldn't take this long. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's just a burden on the taxpayer and the burden on the people who are paying for these prisons when you're putting someone on death row for 20 years. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Do you think he's innocent? Do you think he's guilty? This is just a case I found fascinating, and I've just begun to dive into it. So as this case evolves, I will definitely dig into it more and talk about it more, because this is one of the more fascinating cases for me in recent memory, because it's a death row state, it's Texas, it's all these things that are incredibly interesting to me. Plus, it involves the death of a child, which is just incredibly horrific. And if you hurt children, you deserve to be punished to the full extent of the law, including death, in my opinion. But let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. And as always, like this video, comment on it, share it, email it to your grandma, all that good stuff. Hit the subscribe button so you're always notified to when I upload. Until next time, guys, have fun and stay safe.